Welcome back to the Masked Boomers. I'm Ward,
And I'm ice cream soda.
and and this marks a kind of a fun new event for us. It's the first time that we've been on with a guest.
Yeah, which is good because then we don't have to do as much talking.
Well, it's that's true. That's true. And the conversation that takes place will probably be a lot more interesting.
Probably.
For folks. And so we're going so our guest today is
All the pressure's on me.
well, we haven't lived as long as we have without learning how to pass it a little bit, the buck. I mean, we're into accountability and ownership, but why not share the wealth?
Oh yeah.
But we have with us today an author, and I will confess to you that prior to getting together, I don't know still that much about Andy Nowicki, and he is, and I've already got a recommendation of which of his many books I should read, and we'll talk a little bit about those, or let Andy talk about those as well. So, Andy, welcome to Masked Boomers, and thanks for being willing to be a participant in our first ever, having a guest shot.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
very excited.
I'm very honored to be your first ever guest, and that's something nobody will ever be able to take away from me, no matter what. And so I consider it an achievement, and I will be forever grateful for it. Thanks.
Well,
So thanks.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just said so thanks. I'm giving you thanks
Well,
for.
thank you again, and hopefully you'll still be as thankful after we conclude our first session together, right?
I'm sure I will be. I'm sure we'll have some fun.
The reason, obviously, that we have, that Andy is here is because, through having conversation with common folks that we know, it's good to know that you're not by yourself. We're not alone in the way in which we perhaps see certain aspects of the world, the way in which the country's headed, and all those things that we as boomers have traditionally grown up with and thought of as the kind of values that that we like to see embodied in the country, and how hard it is now to realize that, particularly in the media, that there's not a lot of truth tellers and not a lot of folks that are doing anything other than trying to shape how we think. And Andy is one of those folks that's telling the truth and speaking truth to with all of this
As we know it. I mean, we can
Yeah.
only go by how much they're
Tell
giving.
this truth to the best of my ability. Yes,
Right.
that's
exactly. And so getting his perspective, we were talking about Andy, your thoughts on where you see the media at right now in terms of how they even report things, if I could use that phrase, and what they are important.
I've never I've long been I've been down on the media for quite some time, but I would say that even I have been shocked at just the extent to which the media, as we know it, I guess what generally gets called the mainstream media, the legacy media, the heavily funded media, the extent to which they are absolute liars. And the German word Lügenpresse comes to mind for me. It just means lying press. That's what describes them perfectly. Through everything, I would say that this all began. This sense of things having taken this real turn for the worse, and this feeling of sort of sliding into the abyss as a culture. Like, I mean, it had been kind of building for a while, but slowly, and there was more, sort of more of a sense of, well, the decline is coming, but it's still in the future, so let's not worry about that too much. But right around, I guess 7 years ago, is when things really started to go off the rails, and you just started to see the media behave in a manner where it was like, I can't believe. I was thinking before, naively, like, of course they're going to talk about this or that. Like, they have to cover this. They may not want to, but they have to. They'll lose all credibility if they don't. And then they didn't, and then they would say that certain legitimate story X was fake news. That was a term that they started using for a while.
Right.
But the term that really took over was misinformation.
Yes.
And that kind of blindsided me as as an already jaundiced media observer. I would say I'm still kind of kicking myself that I didn't see that coming. It was like the end around. Like, I knew that the media, again, generally speaking, the big heavily funded media, the stuff that has the millionaire billionaire budget behind
Right.
it. I knew that it was not totally trustworthy. But there came a point where I realized, as with a thunderbolt, wow, this is the plan. This is what they're going to do. They're going to say, they're going to say, we believe in free speech as much as the next guy.
Right.
Freedom of speech is great, and we all treasure it, but misinformation. When we encounter misinformation, we cannot let that slide, because misinformation is dangerous, and so we have a responsibility to make sure that misinformation doesn't spread, doesn't get around, and that was the tack that they took. Especially going into the insanity of 2020. Like it just got especially stepped up, like mega accelerated,
Yes.
that, and suddenly you were getting banned off of YouTube if you used certain words, and if you didn't, they were saying, well, you should trust the experts. Well, like, which experts? Because there were a ton of experts, people who had, when it came to when it came to the medical controversy, there were plenty of people who were just as expert as the ones that they were pointing
Yes.
us to, who were saying the exact opposite of what the Fauci types were saying.
Right.
But yet we were still not supposed to trust them, and they were silenced. They were taken off of social media, and they were not allowed to have their words get out there. They were forced underground. And so it was suddenly like I realized that, oh, well, this was their plan all along. This was, well, I mean, I don't want to give them too much credit, because I don't think they're that clever. Like, there's I think in a way they bumble along, just like anybody else. They're evil, but they're not always diabolically, fiendishly clever.
Well, it's
But
interesting, because when it really first started, as you said, back to 20. Well, actually, I think what you used the term fake news. I mean, that was a Trumpism when it first emerged, and
well,
it
Trump
seemed
kind of
like
Trump kind of Trump. I'm
I'm
sorry
sorry.
to interrupt you. Trump took it and made it his own. He sort of
Yes.
what I can't think of the word. There's a word for it when you when you steal, you know, it was their term, and he sort of reappropriated it and made it
Yeah.
his own. So then they had to distance from that phrase.
But
But yeah.
I think but I think where as people started to wake up a little bit, and I have in mind as I say this, someone who's a very bright person that is close to our family, and a PhD, if you will, but someone who, in a recent conversation, would talk about how you really shouldn't worry. Everything kind of has happened before, and things settle out, and
Mhm.
everybody adjusts. And I think that was the prevailing mentality that allowed, as you say, we start to see it coming, but you think it's coming gradually. But I
Yeah,
think because people have become somewhat aware, they up their game because I think they're running out of runway
they're
in
getting more
terms
desperate.
of people becoming aware of what's really happening.
Yeah, they're getting more desperate. That when they weren't so desperate, they could sort of let it slide a little,
Right.
and yeah, they said uh prior to, say, 2015 or so, things were kind of mellow, even on
Yes.
social media. You could say what you wanted, more or less. You could talk about what you wanted, all kinds of controversial topics. Like,
Yeah.
even on YouTube, if you t-
Right.
if you typed in the name of a certain elementary school in Connecticut, um, like the first like like the first 10 or 12 videos would be about how the official story is wrong. I mean, and that's just if you typed in the name, not like hoax or anything like that. I'm not saying the
Right.
name because
Right.
it's still kind of a toxic name to say. I don't, so I'm going to avoid that, certain words, and
A lot of things are just lightning rods now. Absolutely.
yes, absolutely. Um, but what I remember, thinking back, like back in 2015, I was doing, like, I started doing individual podcasts on SoundCloud, and most of these uh, uh, broadcasts that I did back then aren't even around anymore. But I do remember one where I took note of something, and that was, this was when Obama was still president, and
Mhm.
he came out and said something like, I believe in free speech, but I believe in the internet. We people should be able to say what they want, but it should be curated. And
Sure.
so, yeah, we need to have there needs to be. He said curators of truthiness. He was using that stupid Stephen Colbertism,
Right.
truthiness. Uh, those are his exact words. So, like, it was like, again, that was the initiation of this whole mentality of, what we see now. If even on YouTube, if you mention something, if you mention, I don't know, JFK assassination, or moon landing, or I don't know, whatever else,
Right.
you get that stupid curated thing from Wikipedia saying this is a conspiracy theory, a right-wing conspiracy theory, blah blah blah, blah, sort of telling you how to, like, more and more, like, the media, whose job it was supposed to be to just report what was going on. It was like they were leading with, this is how you should feel about all of this,
Right. Right.
um, and just being completely shameless in that regard. And the more I saw of that, the more it was like, wow, they're really, they're pulling out all the stops here. I mean,
Okay.
and I'm sorry, go ahead. I don't
No,
want to totally dominate.
they are pulling out all the stops, and I mean the advent of what is it now? What's it? Fact checkers. All right.
Yeah,
And,
fact
oh,
checkers. Yeah,
who's
yeah,
who's that? Right. Oh, the guy who
yeah.
believes the right things, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the idea of fact checking. Like, the arrogance behind it is that they know the truth, and you don't. And you're an ignoramus, and they're
Yeah.
going to, that they're going to give their appointed fact checkers, let their appointed fact checkers say, it's false, because we say it's false because our experts say it's false. Paid the experts that we pay to say the things we want them to say that it's false, and it's a total farce. So I remember at some point along the way thinking like, this isn't like, without being hyperbolic. I remember thinking, and I think I've said this a few times. This isn't that much different from what the press must have been like in the Soviet Union during during the regime of communism, because it's like, I'm sure that if you read whatever the, like, Pravda, I guess, was the main
Right.
newspaper in Russia during that time, but there were others. I'm sure that you could find some stories that were well written and that were like local color, charming little stories of interest here or there. But as far as the headlines go, as far as what they led with and the things they talked about versus the things that they ignored,
Yes.
it was very controlled, and now everything is controlled here in the West. It's exactly the same way. It's a total parallel.
Well, and the frightening part of it is yeah, I mean, history's got a pretty clear example. I mean, the whole Marxist thing and Stalin thing was basically the end justifies the means. That is to say, in pursuit of what we see as the ultimate welfare for the greater good, it's perfectly okay to tell people whatever lies you need to tell them in order to bring about that desired outcome. And that's how I feel about where we are. They will tell us anything they need to tell us, and in fact, we see it happening all the time. How many things have 51 intelligence experts sign a sworn statement that said, oh, this is Russian disinformation,
Right.
uh, the
And
laptop, and then when they're caught red-handed, they say, well, and they just ignore it, and there's no consequence and no accountability. And I think,
yeah,
and that's the thing that gives me pause, and why I'm so troubled, because I'm not quite sure I see how you break that spiral or break that hold that they have.
and well, I mean, the same goes with the like all of everything that they were pushing during all of 2000 and most of 2001, and even
Yeah,
into 2002. Suddenly, it was like, oh yeah, we were wrong about just about everything. Uh, but we're not going to apologize. We're not going to say, we're not going to take responsibility. We're not going to offer our sincere condolences for taking your freedoms away and imposing all of these hideous restrictions upon you, and behaving like tyrants, and ignoring the Constitution. It's just like, well, come on, move on. Why are you still hung up on that? That was
yeah,
2 years ago. That was 3 years ago. And like, that's their attitude now. It's so shameless. Like I've said, like I think I said a few minutes ago, the shamelessness of it.
yes.
Um, so so striking. It's like these are people who, one is tempted to think just don't have any kind of conscience at all. Who just they can just lie, and
I,
lie and
Yes. Well, in fact, that's kind of a good segue into one of the other topics that we were chatting about earlier. That I'm sure everyone would be very interested in hearing your take on, is the whole situation with Tucker Carlson. And I have to admit myself, as that first all started to unfold, because I always thought the big I didn't even think about it being part of ultimately the Dominion voting machine thing. I just thought after the first night he did his monologue, show the first footage of the January 6th, which showed a whole different picture than the narrative we'd been getting. And then when he didn't show anything more, you certainly knew something was afoot. but and now fast forwarding, to them, saying, okay, you're done. And you had mentioned earlier that you had the opportunity to view his Tucker Carlson's first Twitter stream, and so I was interested in if you could give folks your sense of that, the value of it, good, bad, just your first impressions, and whether or not you think this will be allowed to continue.
Well, that last question is an interesting one. Will it be allowed to continue? What role is Elon Musk playing in all of this? Elon's kind of like I think of Elon as like the good cop, like in the like the and as far as our controllers go, there's just like when they take you in for interrogation, there's the bad cop who threatens you, and then the good cop says, hey, don't be so hard on him. This really isn't fair. Let him talk. I'm sure I'm sure he's innocent, or just give him a chance. I sort of suspect that Elon is like the good cop, but that's just my take on it. I don't really know anything for
I
sure.
think that's a fair characterization. He's not always one way or the other. He's not 100% predictable, and I think that's what gives him some measure of credibility.
Right.
Uh, because he won't always side with one way or the other. However, I also think ultimately, and in this case, I'm hoping that he will come down and say, no, we got to let this continue,
Yeah.
because for just that reason.
Well, I think it's amazing that Tucker was on fire. I mean, I saw the broadcast, and I was like, wow, this is Tucker as we've never heard him before. Like this is Tucker, without any breaks.
Yeah.
He was going on about, I mean, the first thing he talked about was the destruction of the dam, the Dnieper River, I believe. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, in Ukraine, and how it was blamed on the immediate, thing that the media did was to blame Russia, and to say that this was an atrocity committed by the Russians, and the Russians are so evil, but he was saying, look, the evidence doesn't point that way, um, and he laid out a case for it, and then he went on to talk about other things, like he mentioned 9/11 in Pat. He didn't say any details about it, but he said he was saying things like, we can't trust anything of what they're telling us. They like you were saying a few minutes ago, they have this paternalistic attitude towards us. They just think of us as like they're our parents, and we're little children, and they just tell us what we need to hear at a given time. So he was like on fire, and I thought it was great. And then afterwards, I caught wind of what some of the mainstream media was saying, and what they were saying was like, oh, um, isn't this sad to see Tucker Carlson? He clearly he's like he's got no budget. Look, this looks all shoddy, and there's it's not like he doesn't look cool and snazzy like he did on Fox News, and it's like it's all focused on the superficial, and
Right.
and no and none of them were talking about how 80 million people apparently, in what, the first few hours? Is that what you were
Right.
telling me?
Yes.
We're tuning in to this broadcast, and that's like
It's more than
that
um,
that's
oh,
phenomenal. That's a phenomenal number of people. Um, and his basic message was that the news media generally doesn't tell us the truth, and people are hungry and thirsty for the truth, and that was his message. And now I don't know what I think. I don't know any of these people. I don't know Elon Musk. I know Tucker Carlson. I don't know if what we see is what we get with with either one of them or with anybody else. But I mean, I would say as far as the message that he was communicating in his first ever Twitter, podcast, I thought it was just incredible. He was just, and like he was going places that he wouldn't have gone. He would have known. Oh, I can't talk about this on Fox News. I don't think they would let him mention 9/11, like how we don't really know the truth about 9/11 on Fox News. I don't think that would have happened, but he felt free to talk about it here. So yeah, so that's an example of what's going on, but also the effort that they made, their desperate effort to claim that, oh, he's just Tucker is just irrelevant. Don't pay any attention to him. He doesn't have any production values. He doesn't have these cool flashing lights and all the things that we have on the news networks, and therefore don't take him seriously. But I wasn't even noticing any of that stuff. I was just hearing what he was saying, and I was riveted by his words.
Well, you really have to ask yourself, it's so simple. If they're so quick to try to shut him down and shut him up, don't you think there might be an element of truth to what he's saying?
Well, I also think that you had 72 million views, some crazy
Big
number
number.
of views in such a short period of time. And I think it says something that I guess you can view it as encouraging. That's not just people all with the same point of view. That's with a number of people who probably are across the spectrum, all of whom know they're not being told the truth
anymore. Right.
And so
They've woken up.
they're searching to find someone who's going to tell them the truth. And
Yeah.
not that he's the know all and be all, but I think it's an indication of just what you said, Andy, that everybody kind of knows that they're being manipulated.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Look at all the uh, drag queen, all this whatever. I can't even.
What the
I
LGBTQ?
can't do the whole.
What?
Yes, all
what?
that.
What do you mean?
Well, the fact that they're so busy trying to make it look like, oh, there's nothing wrong with this, and everybody should be coming out celebrating. And now
Yeah.
the White House is going to have the biggest celebration ever.
Ever.
Like this is a big deal. This is just being forced down everybody's throat.
Anyway.
Yep.
Indeed.
The group, I can't think, the sisters of whatever, this drag queen group that mocks Catholic nuns has been invited to a Dodgers Pride Night event, and so these aren't just like people who are gay and like like, well, let's celebrate your accomplishments kind of thing. This is like, these are people who their whole shtick is to mock Catholicism, to be sacrilegious, to be blasphemous, to be provocative to people who have religious convictions. And they're definitely pushing these, like, these very extreme kinds of these extreme groups, and it's it's of course inviting a backlash, and that's only to be expected, because there are people who just aren't down with it.
Yep, for sure. We got a comment from the chat. Can you see that, Andy? Or if not, I can give it to you or read it to
I
you.
can't see the chat right now. I probably would if I was more. I'm more of a boomer than y'all are, even though I'm Gen X. When it comes to computer stuff, I just don't know.
This is from the chat, and it's someone who has read The Insurrectionist and the Muse, both books that this individual, the Hacker Nova, highly recommends. And if you like the books, Fight Club and Invisible Monster, you'll like Andy's books. And that's a comment from the chat. So what's your thoughts there?
Oh, thank you. I'm very flattered to be compared to Chuck Palahniuk, and I know his work is massively popular. And Fight Club is one of my favorite movies ever, and it certainly had an effect on my aesthetic sensibilities, and my writing. So yeah,
Okay.
that's so thanks. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that compliment.
We're gonna take a short break right now, as we had discussed, and when we come back, we'll talk about around some of the reporting of the events of on a bigger scale, not just the dam, but the war in Ukraine in general. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more when we come back. So we'll be back in around 10 minutes. Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Hey, everybody, welcome back. And as we said, our guest today is Andy Nowicki, and we're very pleased to have him and have enjoyed our conversation so far. And as we mentioned just before the break, what we're going to chat a little bit about now is just the uh, get Andy's thoughts on how the reporting has been done around the Ukraine war, and also maybe some of these things which appear to be maybe false flag attacks, like the discussions around the dam on the Dnieper River that's was blown up, and people immediately saying it was the Russians who did it. And in fact, it may have been the Ukrainians, given that that portion of Ukraine where it was done is occupied territory. So anyway, we're going to kick that around. So Andy, I'm sure this this is probably something that's occupied some of your thinking as well in terms of how it's been reported. But generally, what's your impressions of how the media has handled this thus
Well,
far?
I'd want to go back in time, maybe a couple of months. When was it that the Nord Stream pipeline went kaplooey?
Oh, that's
What
been
you,
several months, yeah.
that
Since
that
right,
that event, that happening, and the collective shrug that it was met with by the mainstream media. I mean, again, I shouldn't be surprised because, again, basically, if I could just if one could just get it in their head that the mainstream media today in the United States and the West generally is no different from what the Soviet press was during the when the Soviet Union was in effect. I mean, it's totally controlled, top down. They decide what stories to tell. They decide what stories not to tell. Stories that they tell, they decide to give a, give a definite spin. There's no
right,
at all. Um, but with an event like that, where something that huge,
right.
where this is an act of war. Whoever
Exactly.
did it, like
Yeah.
that they would disrupt the means by which countries in Europe would be able to get fuel for their vehicles and to heat their homes or what and whatever else. And it's just suddenly it's destroyed and of course you just before that there had been even Biden had said something like, yeah, that's not gonna that pipeline's not gonna be there,
I was
trust me.
I was going to say that. He about a month or two before it occurred, he made basically an emphatic statement. Did we be allowed
Yeah,
to?
he said if he was supposed to say it or if it was like a whatever the case. I mean, like it's right there. He said it, and there'd been a couple other statements by I think somebody in NATO or something to the effect that that uh, that we're if this if if this war continues, I think it was contingent upon Russia initiating their military, whatever you want to call it. You call it an
That was,
invasion, call it
that was the excuse. That was the excuse. So they wanted to cut off a revenue source for Russia so that they couldn't finance the war in Ukraine or some such spin.
yes. Now, Seymour Hersh, who's like he's an elderly guy now. He's been around for ages, but has a lot of you know, he's somebody who's generally held to have had a lot of integrity, and he's exposed a ton of things that uh, you know uh, he exposed the Miley
Right.
massacre in Vietnam. He so he's got this this resume that is impressive of being, an investigator who goes where others fear to
Right.
tread. And he came out with a report that said the United States did it, and he's got, here's how it happened, um, and it makes total sense. Like not only did it sound plausible, again, you had the words of Biden and you had the words of whoever these NATO people were, that confirm it. And the feeble effort that they were doing in the press at first, in concert with the military industrial complex, of course, the feeble effort they were making at first was to say, well, the Russians probably did it, which makes no sense at all. That's like punching yourself in the face. Why would you do that? There's no rationale for that at all that makes any sense. And then but basically they said nothing. They said Seymour Hersh's report was just a lie, that it was wrong, but they didn't go into detail about it. So it was basically an unspoken truth that it seemed like everybody who really thought about it, you couldn't escape knowing who did it and why they did it. It was and to me, it was an act of war. It was an act of it's similar to I don't know, like attacking a country's infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's like taking away civilians' capacity to take care of themselves. In a cold winter, this is like this is a war crime. I think you could even make the case. And eventually, months later, they kick it down the line, and then they say, "Oh, now we have intelligence that Ukraine did it on their own." And so that's the official line that they're saying, that they're spouting now in the Western media, was that Ukraine did it on their own. I don't think Ukraine has the ability to pull off a caper like that on their
No.
own. I don't think they have the means to do it or the manpower. But you know who does, is the U.S. military industrial complex, and
Yeah.
they've definitely got the means, and they've got the manpower, and they've got the motivation. It's all there. So the fact that nobody was it was just another one of those things where there why is nobody talking about this? Why is nobody saying, calling attention to this again event, this occurrence that could be called a war crime. It's definitely something that people should be asking questions about, and the people who get paid to ask questions weren't asking the questions,
Right.
and so it was yet another case of that. I mean, it was just it was so frustrating. Again, what it showed is what I was saying before, that the media is totally controlled. They don't say any. They don't come out with any story that they're not told from a higher place to come out with. They're it's the mockingbird media, as you know. There was the whole notion of a CIA operation called Operation Mockingbird, and I think somebody quoted the CIA director at some point as saying, "When everything that anyone ever says in the media is a lie, then we'll know we've won." And I mean, that's basically where we're at right now. I mean, this is the Mockingbird
Right.
media, as far as I'm concerned.
That is true. And I mean, I just oh, okay. And another, I mean, and I think that kind of sums up everything they've been telling us about that war and other events as well. And I guess perhaps even more prominently in my mind, particularly as I read articles about the the absolutely horrific treatment that is befalling people who have been jailed on the January 6th, uh,
Mhm.
uh, which is, I mean, criminal is an understatement for what they're doing to those people. I mean, the folks that are being held inside, the way they're being, some of them being beaten, and a lot of that stuff gets out. What are your thoughts on again the reporting or the lack thereof, or even questioning the events around the 6th? I mentioned earlier when we were chatting that there was a story that was on the Gateway Pundit where it shows two police officers literally cutting away the tarp underneath the bleachers. And then, subsequent to that, during court proceedings, those two policemen were testifying under oath that it was protesters who had done that.
Mm.
And so now we see that, but yet, again, unless you search out outlets that would report on those things accurately, if you're somebody who's sitting in front of the tube, obviously you'll never have a clue as to what's really going on. But again, what are your thoughts on the way the whole January 6th? Not even talking about the protest or not, but just the whole way in which these events have transpired and the reporting that's going on.
What I thought was hilarious about the January 6th event was how you had all of these like liberals and leftists suddenly like foaming at the mouth and saying this is insurrection, insurrection. Like
Right.
insurrection became their byword. I mean, these
Yes.
were the same people who were saying in during the Trump years become ungovernable. These are the same people who were saying, burn down the cities, essentially.
Yeah.
During the summer of 2020, become ungovernable. Silence is violence, and now like they didn't give a damn about being loyal to the country,
Right.
but now suddenly they're super patriots
Yeah.
and they're calling the people who are protesting insurrectionists because they supposedly stormed the Capitol, which is highly suspect. I don't I haven't I will admit I haven't looked closely into what exactly all went down. But I know that there are so many anomalies and so many things that like guards letting people in or just standing by
Well,
while people
even
just
along the lines of the reporting, though, the thing that strikes me, because I can remember like Schumer and others saying this stuff out in public. We're talking about lying and the media going along with it. Oh, 4 or 5 police officers were beaten that day. They died that day. Not a single police officer. I mean, the only people who got beaten that day, obviously Ashley Babbitt was the one who was shot dead, and
yeah
then there were other protesters who were beaten by the police. But yet, to your point of earlier, they can just stand up there and say those, which everybody knows are provably false. I think that was part of the Tucker Carlson January 6th
right
commentary. It's provably false, and yet nobody questions anything. Not a thing.
Well,
yeah
the thing that
yeah
gets,
not,
they requested um,
Oh, the National Guard.
National Guard, and they got, I mean, Trump said to be a good
Yeah.
idea, and they flat out refused it. They didn't do anything to um,
mm,
to isolate, people from the Capitol. No, and what was the thing that they did then wrap the whole Capitol building around? They thought there was some. Was it a day of prayer? Something that was going on where they thought it would get out of hand. They had all kinds of FBI
Well,
all
they
through
didn't. Yeah,
the crowd, and it
that's just
never happened.
yeah, that's just more of the
No, but
posturing. Yeah,
but then they wrapped the whole Capitol building with fencing
right.
and I think they did have maybe
Well,
the
it was
National Guard out that day. And then nothing happened.
No, yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Well, I mean, but the whole January 6th thing is that between because Capitol Police are under the purview of the Speaker of the House, and so Nancy Pelosi at the time, didn't do anything, and the mayor of D.C., who also had the vote, they said no guard, which really to me speaks to the fact that it was a setup. They didn't want other
Nope,
people
they
there
didn't
because
want anybody involved.
they needed some kind of fabricated confrontation, particularly if you look at the Tucker Carlson reporting, particularly on guys like Ray Epps, who are shown repeatedly,
You got to get in the
in the
Capitol.
Capitol, in the
Gotta
Capitol,
get
and
in.
throwing things into it, but yet, he's held completely harmless, not even charged. I
Mm.
mean,
No, right.
and all those guys who look clean cut, all the FBI, all the FBI agents who were in the crowd, who you could pick out,
Right.
amazing. Anyway,
Well, you know what? And there's another thing, not too long, just in the last week, the Christian group of children singing in the
oh, in the Capitol, the children's choir. Did you guys you are familiar with
yeah,
that, Andy, right?
I'm not sure. Like, tell me
there
more about it.
There was a children's a school's a choir who had gone through, and I think they might even have been from the speaker's district, but they had gone through a couple congressmen, for a visit, gotten all the permissions, and they were going to do, and these are like middle school kids. They were going elementary. They were going to do a little concert in the statuary hall in the Capitol. And
Mhm.
so they were singing, and they happened to be singing the national anthem
Yeah.
at the time, and they were approached. The director was approached by an officer
Yeah.
of the Capitol Police and told them that they were unable to do that because that's considered to be a protest.
And
There-
offensive to some people.
and offensive to some people. Therefore, they cannot. They can't. So they stopped them. And so the kids, to their credit, and the choir director, they went out and sang on the Capitol steps, which I guess was okay. But they've also since asked for an apology, and I think McCarthy is trying to get them brought back in so they can do their concert. But imagine that the Capitol Police person said, "This is a protest; it's not allowed, and it
This
would
is
be
offensive.
offensive to some people."
Singing your national anthem in your Capitol.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey,
That's
Really?
yeah. I mean, that's amazing. That's just surreal. But it's very much in line with the kind of stuff that we're hearing. Like wasn't there an FBI report that came out recently saying things like, if you hear people using terms like red pill or freedom or
yes,
whatever, that person's is probably or might be a domestic terrorist.
yes,
I mean, there's that vibe that they're putting out, that's what that whole this whole atmosphere of this whole atmosphere of fear that they're trying to create around around dissidents, around people who I guess would be primarily considered dissidents of the right, but who don't necessarily. I mean, like, there's no as far as like there being any kind of history of. I mean, the kind of the idea of associating somebody who says who talks about the red pill, or who I can't remember some of the other buzzwords that they
well, in
that they
fact, it's funny because from the chat, as I'm looking at it, someone said, "Oh my God, based and red pilled." Yeah, those are horrible, horrible terms.
yeah, based, yeah, that's another one. Yeah, if you use the word based, you're probably a domestic terrorist, and
Yes,
they,
absolutely.
they should watch you. um um yeah, well, I mean, it's that's like I said, a
Bad
surreal
con-
type of story, but believable, very believable. Um, and these are the people who claim, and the people who were again against this, who were against these kids singing "God Bless America" or whatever they were saying in the national anthem.
Well,
They're the ones who they're the
yeah,
ones who style themselves as super patriots,
Yeah,
and on January 6th and say we're against insurrection. Insurrection is terrible. These
right.
insurrectionists are just trash. That we've got to do something about all these insurrectionists.
Right.
Um, but this is essentially insurrection of the mind.
Sure is.
Saying the national anthem is offensive. That's
mind blowing.
Well, you know what I also, unfortunately, what I find myself thinking a lot about, and I guess it, from an age standpoint, it takes you back thinking about, and I think we talked about it a few episodes back on how law-abiding or good people can somehow transition. I think about the folks to like the Capitol Police or people like this. I mean, and people who know, or even FBI agents, people who know what they're being asked to do is wrong. They know that
yeah.
it's authoritarian. They know I mean, they do intellectually, they have to understand, and yet they allow themselves to be brought along. And I equate that to something Tucker talked about, and I can't remember the name of the place, and maybe you can, Andy, where he delivered. I think it was the Heritage Foundation. He delivered a speech, and that was the very night he was being terminated. He didn't know it, and he was talking about people having to have courage, and how he has found that a lot of people, even people he thought had courage, when threatened with a loss of a job or threatened with
Yeah.
punishment or threatened with something, just caved. And that's
Yeah.
how I think of a lot of these people who, hey, I need the job more than I need my integrity, so I'm just going to go along with it, and I'm just following orders. And suddenly you see how this stuff happens when good people simply just let themselves be swept along in what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and you understand the struggle, of course. You
Right.
can yeah, I can understand, I can relate to the struggle, but on the other hand, what's right is right. And so, you do have to take a stand. You do have to
You
um you know you have to let yourself, become persona non grata, essentially, which is what
you
basically I mean, not to toot my own horn too much, but I'm basically persona non grata right now. I mean, I don't know, my name doesn't really mean anything to you when you hear it. I'm not notorious the way that some names are, but if you're a prospective employer and you type my name into a search engine, you're going to come up, you're going to see some stuff that
yes.
that's gonna interest you, let's just say. And I've chosen to be this way just because I don't know any other way to be. Like,
Wow.
I wanna I and it's maybe cost me a lucrative career. I mean, it almost certainly has. But I think, and I can't speak for everybody, but I know everybody's situation is different, and with some people it's more complicated. But I do think you do have to take a stand
Yeah,
somewhere along the way.
you
It just
do.
has to happen.
You do. Well, I would almost say to lighten up, we could kind of move on to the next topic, but I'm not sure. I think it'll be interesting. I'm not sure how much of lightens things up,
Sure.
but I'm very intrigued of getting your viewpoint on what you see in the upcoming presidential election. From any perspective. I mean, some of the candidates. What do you think is going to fall out? Just
I,
any
I'm
observations.
I'm not a political pundit, but I'll do the best I can. JFK Jr. intrigues me. I mean, I like the guy. I have to admit. I know he's not perfect. I know he's said some things in the past that people, like some conservatives, have brought up, like him talking about global warming, and I don't know, the Second Amendment and other stuff like that. But there's something impressive to me about a man who, I mean, I think out of all of the candidates um, running right now, he's got the most impressive record as far as opposing lockdowns, opposing vax mandates,
Mhm.
uh,
Down.
opposing.
No, yes. Well, no, he's probably got the most soundly based viewpoint
Yes,
on all
and
of that. Because
I
his
said
experience worked with that stuff for years and years and years.
I meant to say RFK. I think I said JFK Jr. I meant to
Well,
say RFK.
no, I understood exactly, exactly what you meant, and
And
and I think he says in terms of all the candidates, not just those that would oppose Biden on the Democratic side, which
right.
is unheard of, generally speaking. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, in a way, he's like a sentimental favorite of mine, even though I know he's bad on, I mean, I am, of course, pro-life, and I know he's probably not good on that. I know he's probably not good on the Second Amendment and other, other sorts of things. But just the integrity that he seems to embody on this, like, because I'm like, the lockdown stuff was really, it hit me hard. Uh, I was really incensed at how things, at how everything, how they were able to do that, how the powers that shouldn't be, how they were able to manipulate everybody um, into this scenario that I just didn't, I had never fathomed that kind of scenario before. I had never thought, I didn't even think going into the year 2020, I didn't think there's a possibility that for most of the year, they're going to force your kids to come home from school. They're going to force force your businesses to close. They're going to take away your jobs unless you're deemed quote unquote essential. Um, and they're going to force this arbitrary quote social distancing and force you to wear a mask. And then when the vax stuff came around, and they were firing people left and right. They were saying, you have to get this, and like somehow that somehow trying to make it be in line with the principles of the Constitution and the notion of personal liberty. Like it doesn't work. It doesn't jibe. Um, and so for me, I guess RFK Jr. has the like because he's been very good
So
like
you
on
think
taking
power at that time he could have changed it?
I don't that's a good question because I don't know how much did maybe how much did Trump want to how much did Trump just feel like he had to go along with things like I don't know. I don't like in a way I understand that Trump was probably swept away, like he probably had all these forces against him, and
But
and he was struggling, and he had to make some compromises. But RFK Jr. talks about how that like we should hold Trump accountable for the fact that he caved, that he declared the state of emergency and so forth, and he's got a point. He really does.
Yeah. We have as we get close to wrapping up the powers that be behind the scenes have got an interesting question for all of us. Each one of the three of us, we got to say finally they wanted to get our and you've kind of touched on a little bit of in this last comment on RFK,
Mhm.
but everyone's personal thoughts on first of all the lack of debates this time around because it doesn't seem like anybody's going to have them either
Yeah.
inter-party or intra-party and who each of you given the circumstances and what you know right now who would you vote for and why.
Um,
Andy, you
should
want
I
to
go
start with
first?
that one? Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not big on. I kind of think voting is a sham. I think it's rigged. I'm not a big believer in it. I mean,
And how
but I mean that said, there are certain candidates that I hope will. I mean, I definitely hope that Biden is defeated. Whether in his own party by
Right.
JFK or by RFK Jr. or somebody else, or by whoever the Republican is. And you know, I mean, I guess the best Republican is probably Trump, although I have reservations about him as well. So that those are my thoughts about
And guess
I
what?
guess
Like I say,
the
I'm
upcoming
kind
president.
of in the same. I'm kind of in the same place. I really would like to see debates, but I wouldn't be confident based on what we've seen that you could even have a legitimately structured debate
right.
that isn't being orchestrated like they have been.
Yeah.
But but I admit to the reason I'd really like to see a debate is presidential debate is I'd like to see Biden on the stage with anyone for about
Yeah.
90 minutes where they can't shoot him up or do anything to him and see how he handles spontaneous questions. It would be over. It would
Yeah.
absolutely be. But and who would I vote for? Uh, I tend to think, that there's a lot of stuff about Trump I don't like, but the only thing the big and overwhelming thing I do like is that he's shown the spine to be able to fight some of these. Now, I also know he's capitulated behind the scenes on stuff. I make no mistake about it. But anybody who's been able to withstand what they have continually done to him, at least
Yeah.
to my way of thinking, indicates that he loves the country. At least he loves the country enough to try to do something about it, and he sees the urgency of the situation, whether or not he's the right guy or not.
I mean,
DeSantis,
they're definitely throwing everything in the kitchen sink at him. I mean, that in itself says something that they're
right?
it's
Yeah.
like
Exactly.
it's
I'm
like
tired.
Darth Vader. It's like Darth Vader and The Empire Strikes Back, like just taking all these objects and hurling them at Luke. Like I don't know if you remember that scene, or if
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
Very familiar.
yeah,
and just
absolutely.
like using the force, just like to take things off, grab things off the wall and throw it, at Luke. And that's what Trump is right now. They're just doing everything they can, and it's like it's this state of desperation. Clearly, they don't want him in power, which to me makes him seem more uh, uh, makes me like him more. Just have that reaction of
Do
theirs.
you think they realize they're just entrenching his base more, or are they way smarter than we are, and they're
No,
saying, yeah,
I don't. I think they're just desperate. I mean, that's my guess.
okay,
Um, I don't think they're. I mean, I don't know. I don't think they're Machiavelli. They've got a Machiavellian plan behind it all, or
okay,
anything like that.
okay.
But who knows? I mean, I don't know. That's just my guess.
Well, I mean, the fact that they spent 2 years investing every inch of that land,
And they're not done yet,
and they still couldn't
Yeah,
come up with anything.
and they still haven't, technically
No,
speaking. I
they
mean, they'll
still
come up.
can't
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
can't
exactly.
prove it.
They
It's
had
just
to admit. They had to admit. One of the things. I mean, I'm not like I'm not I'm not a partisan of anybody. Like I said, I'm
Right,
cautious about everybody, even Tucker Carlson, even Elon Musk, even
right,
Trump. I'm not, I don't like have hero worship of any of them. But when the Durham report came out, and they it said all this time was wasted on this Russia thing that was just,
right.
there was never any evidence for, and the mainstream media outlets had to report this.
Right.
I just thought, wow, this has got to be so hard for y'all, and I love it. I love how this is just painful for y'all to have to say.
very
It was
true.
a
Absolutely.
definite Schadenfreude moment.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, I guess that kind of wraps it up. I have to say, thanks for joining us. And I mean, I think our friends have been great. We've enjoyed them. Andy, it's been great to have you, and we would plan to have you back again. And maybe you could share with folks where they can support you online and where they can get your books.
Well, thanks for the offer for me to shamelessly self-promote.
Right
Um,
ahead.
I've got a Substack page, and it's andynowicki.substack.com. You can just type Andy Nowicki Substack into a search engine, and it'll get you there. I've published with you can find my work online. Most everything you can find on Amazon. If you just go to Amazon, type in Andy Nowicki, I've got an author page. You can check out my fiction and my nonfiction. But the company that I've been publishing with lately is Terror House Press, and I do highly recommend everybody who's out there who's listening, check out Terror House Press. They've published a lot of great provocative, countercultural, both fiction and nonfiction. They're a smaller press, but they're definitely worth paying attention to, and worth your time and money.
Well, as we're chatting, I'm not sure if you can see it, but we're scrolling through some of your works and articles for the benefit of the for the viewers as well.
Great.
So
And I'm on YouTube, and I'm also on YouTube just under my name. So
okay,
look me up there.
very good. Well, I hope that we can have you back in the not too distant future.
Yeah, it's been fun. I appreciate y'all having me on as your very first guest ever. That's a high praise for.
Well, it's a big moment for on both sides.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
and
All right, I'll take care.
all right, so I guess we'll see you all again next Thursday.
Right.
And we've got some things coming up where family's going to be coming in, but I think that one falls right in the
Yep, we might
right in the
get that one
slot.
in.
We're in pretty good shape for that next one. But again, thank you everybody. We thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all next week.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andy.
Y'all take care.
Yes.